How to find your learning style. Everyone learns a little bit differently. Some people learn best by listening, while others are visual learners. Most people learn best with a combination of learning styles. Whether you are a student or just someone trying to expand your knowledge base, identifying your learning style will show you how best to enhance your understanding of different topics. Discovering different learning styles. Read about the different learning types. In order to figure out your learning style, it is important to understand the difference between the types of learners. There are many books and websites that you can use to research the topic. Head to your local library and ask the reference librarian. Or ask the guidance counselor at your school for some information. Most people acknowledge that there are 7 different learning styles that are common: visual, auditory, verbal, physical, logical, social, and solitary. People often associate with several of these styles. Ask the guidance counselor at your school for some information. This person should be familiar with all of the styles. Try visual learning. After you do some research, start experimenting with different learning styles. It can be useful to try a new method of learning to figure out which one is your style. You can start with visual learning, which means that you learn by using pictures and other images. Ask yourself if you rely on images to help you understand key topics. For example, when you are reading your biology text, do you find the diagrams more helpful than the written content? Try adding more images into the topic you are learning. If you are studying for a history test, make a chart that illustrates the key topics. If this is helpful, you may be a visual learner. If you are a visual learner, you may find it easier to navigate using a map with markers rather than written directions. Experiment with auditory learning. Oral, or auditory, means you learn effectively through sound and music. If you are not sure if this applies to you, spend some time adding sound to your study sessions. You could begin by reading select passages of your textbook out loud or listening to an audiobook to see if this helps you focus and understand the text. If you need to hear something out loud in order to fully grasp the concept, you may be an auditory learner. Experiment by repeating key concepts to a classmate to see if hearing the material is useful to you. Do you find yourself talking while you read? That indicates auditory learning. Another clue that you are an auditory learner is if you often find yourself annoyed by pictures and the written word. During your next study session, make up some rhymes to help you remember the material. For example, President Carter would never barter with the Soviets. If this seems helpful, you are likely an auditory learner. Learn through words. Verbal learners are most comfortable with words, both spoken and written. If you are an avid reader, you are likely comfortable with verbal learning. Reading is one of the most effective ways for you to retain information. Ask yourself if you are most comfortable listening to a spoken lecture or presentation. Verbal learners often resist group projects or activities. When you study, do you make written outlines of the material? This is an indication that verbal learning is your preference. Use movement to learn. Physical learning is another common type of learning style. Physical learners rely on their hands, sense of touch, and physical activity. Movement is key to retaining information for physical learners. If the thought of sitting through a lecture makes you nervous, you might learn better through physical activity. Do you fidget a lot? That is another sign. To find out whether you are a physical learner, try adding some movement to your routine. Try standing up while reading. Use as many physical objects as possible. Try making flashcards so that you can physically flip through the information. Investigate logic. Another learning style that you can experiment with is logical learning. Logical learners are puzzle solvers who prefer to use reasoning and systems to find answers. People who are good at math are often logical learners. To determine whether you are a logical learner, try rearranging the way you think about material. Look at each individual part instead of just the whole picture. For example, if you are studying World War II, don't just think about who won the war. Spend time thinking about why and how. Making connections is one of the keys to logical learning. If it is your natural instinct to draw clear lines between different topics, you are likely a logical learner. Learn with others. Some people learn best when they are interacting with other people. Social learners learn best in groups or with at least one other person. If you prefer to work with others, you may be a social learner. Does the prospect of a group project make you excited? Do you dread studying by yourself? You likely lean towards social learning. To figure out whether social learning works for you, try forming a study group. Ask one or more classmates to join you after class to work through the material together. If other people often ask you for help with material, that is another indication that you are a social learner. People will notice that you like to discuss what you are learning. Practice solitary learning. Another common type of learning style is known as solitary learning. Solitary learners work best independently. If you are most effective without the help of others, you may be partial to this style. Do you enjoy spending time reflecting on a topic? That is an indication that you are a solitary learner. Instead of trying to just memorize information, solitary learners like to sit back and take time to think about each aspect of the content. Solitary learners often like to make plans ahead of time. They also typically make individual goals for most aspects of life.